I don't know where you're going to find it. As I said, a restaurant of 3.2 acres.
Okay. Again, our backup wasn't exactly clear. It was a little bit vague as to what the facility was going to be. And so we're just asking for clarification on there. Whether you go for a liquor license, a beer or wine license, or none, that's a restaurant without a liquor license or a beer or wine license, I don't think will do very well. So that's really not a point of contention to me.
Okay.
The point of contention I had is the amount of noise at that area. The reason why I think that this has been a point of contention is because along that whole Ryan Road corridor from Chicago Road down to 12 Mile Road, and I believe Planning Commission had stated this, is that these types of roads are not really designed or equipped to handle businesses such as restaurants. That's why we put them on 12 Mile Road. That's why we put them on 13 Mile Road, and some of these, and even like on Hoover. And some people have called this spot rezoning, and I guess I'm curious as to why the owners wouldn't choose to move to 12 Mile Road in one of the two restaurants that are vacant right now. And it just...
I could never ask the owner to. They bought the property.
Okay,
How can you ask them to walk away from a very nice building and a very nice old school, and to walk away? You're depriving them really of their rights to make a living. I think when you talk like that, sir. They want to make a living. They have a restaurant. I've worked, as I said, with the planning department to come up with all these different things. If you look at the things that we had come up with in the last 4 or 5 months, I think it'd be rather astounding, because we did talk to the neighbors, and we did find out what they wanted. The one gentleman back there with the fence, the wood fence, obviously we put the wall this side of the fence. We wouldn't disturb his fence. We would have the surveyor do it. As far as the young lady up here that lives in the house, what can I say? We're 85 feet away from her. We're putting up, as was recommended by the Planning Commission, a 20-foot green belt, 275 feet long, with all kinds of 25, 30 arborvitaes to screen that for her. Now, if she wants more screening, we could be happy to do that.
I realize that this is just a rezoning and not a site plan approval.
Well, that's not really true, because if you look at the essence of what a contract zoning is, everything that I've outlined here has been discussed with Mr. Worth, and if we don't do exactly like it's shown on my drawings that have also been submitted, then it's null and void. We have to meet the requirements. That's why I have worked with Mr. Worth on this thing, so that when we did come to the planning department, which we have to finally go there, it's exactly as we outlined. And the document that you have in your hands here is a very carefully written document by the legal department saying what we have to do.
Right. I had a conversation with our planning department, and they talked about how cooperative you folks have been and how much work that they've done on this. The question that I was going to ask was, the parking lot that is in that's in place right now, were you expanding the parking lot at all?
Of course.
Okay.
But we didn't expand it in the back. We expanded it in the front. We're still, how many feet, lineal feet, from 180 feet from Van Dyke, but the parking is closer now. We did move the parking towards, excuse me, I missed that one. From Ryan, yes, we moved it to Ryan so that we wouldn't disturb the other folks. And that's, all those things were carefully done. This has been something that we spent 50, 60, 100 hours working this out with with my client, with the neighbors. As I said, we went back here, we listened to the neighbors twice now. The first time we invited, how many, what did I say, 54 invitations were sent out, 9 people showed up, and we talked to those people. Then we made suggestions to make them happy. We also moved off our C2 zoning to a C1 contract zoning, which we thought was more definitive. The folks, I suppose, the folks of the South that have the condominium association, actually the hall was there before they rezoned it, to a condominium, so they knew what was happening at the time. I don't know exactly when that condo was rezoned, but the banquet hall for the Masonic folks were there at the time. So complaining now, after we've spent a considerable amount of time, effort, and energy to protect those folks from looking at the parking lot. They won't see the lights from the cars. Nobody will see the lights from the cars. The gentleman in the back that talked about the boats and things like that, he won't see them anymore when we're done with our designs, our walls, and our screening. How can you satisfy everyone in the world? No, you can't. We did our best to accommodate everybody, having listened to their comments in three different meetings, the neighbors. Now they're saying the same thing that they said in those other meetings, even though we've tried to accommodate them. It's going to be impossible. Now, what about music? This is a family restaurant. Will there be music? Obviously there'll be music. Will there be riotous music with all kinds of alcoholic? No, there won't be that. It's a family restaurant. Family restaurants don't have that type of clientele, or if they have, they throw them out. Anyway, I could go on and tell you that all the efforts we've tried to make this thing work. Again, where can you find a family restaurant on 3.2 acres? It's a very large site that we have to work with, and I think we've done a job working with it. As I said, working with Mr. Worth, and we did get the recommendation from the planning department that this thing is a good idea at C1 contract zoning.
The other concern too is when it comes to the name, the Ambassadors Club. It kind of lends to that this is going to be a bar, that this is going to be, and again, and that's where the neighbors are concerned with.
That's a funny situation. Before I came into the picture, they filed for the first meeting, which was indeed a planning commission meeting, and they had that name. And we haven't changed the name. I think they'll probably change the name later. I don't know. It just came in. It was originally put on the first document, and we didn't bother changing it after all the documents because it had already been assigned. And at the Ambassador Club, they told me it's still going to be the name of the restaurant. It's going to be a restaurant named the Ambassador Club. Why? I don't know. You could call it Joe's Restaurant if you want. They just happen to call it the Ambassador Club.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Comartin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Through the chair to Mr. Worth. Good evening, Mr. Worth. There was a couple statements that were made by some residents, and I would like clarification on it. One said that there were some issues with the pre-existing site plan that were not taken care of, and it's my understanding these people own that. So what issues, are there issues that are still covered by a bond that are not addressed?
Yes, through the chair, Ron Worth, planning director. And the previous issue has to do with the site plan. The Masonic Lodge that was there, they had unfinished business, so to speak, things that they were supposed to have constructed that they simply didn't. We still hold a site plan performance bond against that site, and it won't be released until those problems are fixed, repaired, completed, or in the case of this particular plan that's being proposed here, if this plan goes through, it takes care of all of those problems that the Masonic Lodge was unable to complete.
All right, is it the same ownership, the ownership from the Masonic Lodge, or are these new buyers and took over the property with ownership and the other stuff has not been cleared up yet?
The previous owners, Masonic Lodge, have not completed their plan. The new owners typically take the responsibility over, unless
Okay.
there is a contractual agreement between the former and the new owners.
And the other question for sound, we were talking about the sounds through the building. It does, I kind of agree with the one gentleman that spoke, it looked like a warehouse versus a restaurant, and it being metal, you know, we're looking like it's metal material, that does, the sound does reverberate from that, and being so close to residential. The other thing that you had stated is with this, are they changing the facade of the building in any way, shape, or form? The materials, soundproofing, anything like that? Was that addressed in the contract?
It's not addressed in the contract.
All right. Thank you. Then my vote will be reflected by that. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Mr. Worth, I just have one point of clarification on the regards to that bond statement that just came up. It sounded to me as though the bond that was posted by the Masons was being held because their work wasn't completed, which I understand that. But at that point, wouldn't we retain that because they didn't complete the work and require the new owners to post a new bond of their own? Or is it being carried over for their benefit? Because that's the way it came across to me.
It's a carryover. Unless the city and the planning commission decides to go after, so to speak, the performance bond. If we do, we make an effort to, the money ideally is used to complete those concerns on the site. That's what it's about. But we haven't taken those kind of steps.
Okay.
If I may, I want to clarify something. Mr. Tobin has been using the word contract throughout his presentation. It's not a contract. These are conditions. This is called a rezoning with conditions. So the list that you saw are all of the conditions that they're offering at this particular time. They could offer more after this hearing, or less. It just depends on what type of negotiation could be made. Their negotiations at the time of the Planning Commission you see before you, with the wall, the green belt, and they addressed those particular issues. Those were issues that were problems from the previous site and issues that came about that you've heard from the residents. So ideally, those additions were thought to help solve those problems. I'm not speaking for the petitioner, I'm just trying to explain what those conditions are about. The site plan approval is also a condition. So they would have to go before the Planning Commission and get site plan approval. We would address not only those issues, but other issues. I'll go back to, I think, noise. Most certainly, we would address that. Lighting, we always have, it's called 0.0 lighting from along the perimeter of the site so that it's all there. It's not going to